I discovered a cursed portrait of a forgotten princess. Her ugliness hides a haunted secret. I never should have opened that door. It was just supposed to be an old, dusty attic filled with trinkets, relics of a time long gone. But as soon as I stepped in, an icy breath curled around me, pricking my skin. The room was swallowed in darkness. Shadows danced on the walls, fluttering like restless spirits. The air smelled musty, laced with an odor of decay that clung to my throat. I fumbled my way through the clutter, my heart racing, whispers echoing faintly in my ears. Was it the old wood creaking? Or something else entirely? Then I saw it, a grand, tarnished frame, its edges sharp against the gloom. Inside, a portrait of a woman with a twisted visage, the princess. Her skin hung loosely, and her eyes, oh, her eyes were nothing but empty, black holes. They seemed to bore into my soul, beckoning me closer, pulling me into her wretched story, each stroke of paint wrapped in tragedy. They used to say her beauty was unmatched, but my God, what had time done? Or was it a curse? I could feel a chill grip me, a warning. As if the very air around me thickened, heavy with the weight of her sorrow. Suddenly, a loud thump shattered the silence. My breath caught. I turned, heart thundering in my chest. Something moved behind me. My skin prickled. I felt eyes watching. I felt it crawling along my spine. I swallowed hard, panic tightening my throat. Then, a soft rustle, something shifting in the darkness. I dared not look again. Instead, I focused on the portrait, the princess's face twisting in a grotesque smile. I could feel her rage vibrating through the air. Someone whispered my name. It was faint, chilling, a call both inviting and threatening that I backed away slowly, my pulse racing. The shadows seemed to grow bolder, creeping toward me, hungry. I had to get out. I turned fully, ready to escape. But then it happened. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Darkness swallowed me whole. Help! I screamed, but the sound vanished like fog in the dawn. I pressed my back against the cold wood. The whispers grew louder, jagged and frantic, drowning me in their chaos. I felt something brush against my arm. Was it a hand? A cold finger tracing my skin? I couldn't hold back the terror. I wanted to flee, but I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot. And then I saw it, the figure stepped into the flickering light. My breath hitched. What I saw was beyond comprehension. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure loomed in the shadows, its features obscured by darkness, yet an unthinkable familiarity dripped from its essence. Something akin to pity stirred within me as I realized it was the very image of the princess from the portrait. But this was no painting. This was flesh, rotting and grotesque, yet still resonating with the raw agony of a lost soul. Her eyes were still those black chasms, but instead of empty, they shimmered with sorrow, glistening like obsidian stones in the dim light. They locked onto mine, a silent plea dancing between us, a question I could not decipher. Paralyzed by fear, I felt her whispered torment sink into my bones as her lips parted, releasing a cloud of frost into the already frigid air. Why did you awaken me? Her voice slithered through the stillness, an echo from the abyss, laced with despair. You should not have come here. I stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my ribcage. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. The pleas felt hollow in the consuming darkness, as if the shadows themselves devoured my words, leaving me stripped of dignity. Standing before her wretchedness, she stepped closer, and I could see now one side of her face hung loosely against her jaw, as though it were about to detach itself completely. An unseen force pulled me toward her, an irresistible combination of dread and curiosity. I watched, horrified, as her fingers twitched, elongated, and curled like the gnarled roots of a dying tree. The portrait's veil of beauty had faded long ago, revealing a hideous truth forged in body and spirit. Suddenly, the air around me grew denser, heavy with memories that began to bleed into the present, urging memories of laughter and joy that vanished with her unholy transformation. With each breath, I could almost taste her sorrow, a bitter tang that burned my throat. It was inviting and repulsive all at once, like a dream that warped into a nightmare. "Why do you linger in this cursed place?" she asked, drawing even closer, her stench of decay inching forward like a noxious fog. "Don't you understand? I cannot leave." Her gaze faltered briefly, something breakable beneath the rage, as if deep inside her heart lay a creature drowning in despair. "No one can ever leave." Fear sank its claws deeper into my being as whispers burrowed into my consciousness, knitting themselves into my thoughts. I struggled to escape the widening vortex of her presence, but she stepped forward again, her hand extending toward me, fingers crooked like lost branches searching for the sun. "I need your help," she rasped, desperation lining her words. "You must unlock their chains." What chains?" I managed to stammer, sweat prickling at the base of my neck like a soft warning. Before she answered, soft cries invaded the depths of the shadows behind her. A chorus of lamenting voices flooded the room, their pain wrapping around me like a vice. Memories of the past spun furiously in the air, sudden laughter twisting into silence, joyful shouts warping into sorrowful wails. My gut twisted into a knot of horror as figures materialized behind the princess, tormented souls tethered to her existence like marionettes dangling from unseen strings. Familiar faces began to emerge from the darkness, their eyes wide with terror and longing, mouths moving in silent screams, begging for release. "Help us," they harmonized, their voices weaving into one agonizing melody that echoed deep within me, distorting reality into a vortex of despair. A surge of panic ignited within me. "No, I can't. I can't help you," I yelled, knowing all too well that the portraits weren't mere paintings but cursed relics of lives forever bound. The realization clawed at my sanity, and I turned to run, but the door had sealed itself, the wood pulsing with a life of its own, alive, malicious, mocking. The princess lunged, fingers wrapping around my wrist like iron chains, her grasp cold and unyielding. "You're the key," she hissed, her voice mingling with the howls of the Forsaken behind her. "You have to open the door." With her words, everything frayed, and the shadows coalesced, swirling into a monstrous tide that threatened to engulf me whole. The once innocent attic morphed into a prison of horrors, the walls choking me, encasing me with a violent hunger. I screamed, a cry lost to the darkness, as the apparition's grip tightened, pulling me into the absolute maw of the cursed abyss. And just as hope waned, a piercing sound shattered the chamber. A clock chimed, the resonating bell tolling, each note slicing through the torment, echoing ominously, promising imminent doom. As the last note hung in the air, a shudder passed through the floor, and I felt a shift, like gravity itself faltering around me. "It's time," she whispered, her grip unyielding as the abyss opened wide, revealing unspeakable horrors beneath. I stumbled backward, eyes wide with dread, and then it happened. The floor erupted, spiraling down into a chasm that yawned like a hungry beast. I teetered on the edge, my heart racing, as whispers rose in a cacophony, chilling my very soul. "They are waiting," they moaned, pulling me toward the brink. With one final cry, the darkness surged, and I lost my balance, plunging into a world of shadows. And in that moment, I knew a harrowing truth: I had only begun to unveil the princess's curse. The abyss swallowed me whole, a cacophonous plunge that echoed with the screams of the lost. I crashed against a cold stone floor, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs, yet allowing a suffocating silence to envelop me. I lay still for what felt like an eternity, the remnants of terror coiling around me like dark vines, holding me captive in my own mind. Suddenly, a flicker of blood-red light illuminated the void, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the walls of a damp, cavernous chamber. I instinctively scrambled to my feet, heart thundering in my chest. The air was thick with an ancient staleness, as though I had fallen not just into another space, but into the very heart of a dormant curse. As I steadied myself, I began to discern chaotic shapes moving in the distancia, hazy swarm against the crimson light. The silhouettes formed and twisted, revealing faces twisted in anguish, their features warped by despair. I recognized some of them, fragmented images of those who had been entwined in the princess's fate, their mournful eyes pleading for release. "Help us," they called, their words a haunting chant that made the air ripple with tension. It was as if the chamber itself resonated with their pain, amplifying their suffering into a symphony of despair. The wall behind them pulsated with a heartbeat of its own, throbbing in rhythm with the frantic beat of my heart. "Who are you?" I shouted, though my voice trembled, swallowed almost instantly by the cries. The figures raised their hands toward me, golden chains glimmering faintly in the red light, clinking and clanking with every desperate movement. "Unlock the truth," they whispered in unison, their voices overlapping, morphing into a singular, chilling plea that froze the marrow in my bones. "Only then can we be free." As I stepped closer, shadows coiled tighter around the prisoners, squeezing away hope like a vice, warping their forms into grotesque parodies of life. I pressed my palm against the stone wall, feeling a vibration pulse beneath my skin, a strange heat surging through my hand as if drawing strength from my desire to help. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my wrist. I yanked my hand back just in time to see the princess materialize beside me, her features now sharper, clearer, the decay enhanced by the dim light. "You must embrace the chains," she rasped, her face twisted in a mix of urgency and despair. "Only you can yield the key." Gritting my teeth, my resolve began to crumble under the weight of my choice. "What do you mean?" I faltered, confusion battling against instinctual fear. "How can I unlock anything?" In response, she pointed toward the chains binding the souls. "You bear the mark," she hissed, trembling as if struggling against an invisible force. "It binds you to their suffering, making you their only hope." I stared down at my own wrist, feeling a slight tingle, the skin shimmering with an unnatural glow. A mark, neither a scar nor a tattoo, but something far more sinister. I recoiled at the implication. "No. I won't do this." My scream echoed through the chamber, but the portentous heartbeat matched my denial, urging me deeper into the void. I felt the shadows pulling me toward the prisoners. The princess snarling, a mix of desperation and anger twisted her rotting features. "You must. Or they will take you too." She spat, her eyes ablaze with an intensity that sent chills cascading down my spine. "They are hungry for flesh. They'll claim you." In that moment, the air seemed to shatter, a wave of darkness surged forth, icy tendrils wrapping around my throat, choking off my breath as the shadows erupted from the wall, forming grotesque ghouls hungering for release. Their hollow eyes reflected my terror as they lunged forward, arms outstretched, fingers curling into claws seeking flesh. Time froze. I grasped for the chains, the source of their torment, the only glimmer of salvation burning in the abyss of despair, but fear wrestled against me as dread seeped into my very spirit. The room pulsed and quivered, shadows swirling violently as the souls let out a simultaneous wail, the echo penetrating my thoughts, urging me to act. "No. You cannot take her. She is mine. I will not let you claim her." Then, with a surge of desperate anger, I leaned toward the chains, my fear and resolve colliding into a storm forcing its way to the surface. As my trembling fingers brushed against the chains, I felt a punch of energy surge through me, an electric current bolting from the chains to the mark on my wrist, igniting a blinding light that exploded into the room, and then I caved. The world splintered around me, horrified faces melting into shadows, twisting into monstrous forms as the very fabric of reality shattered. I could claw through the chains, but in doing so, I felt an insatiable hunger rise within me, a ghastly yearning for freedom at an ungodly cost. And just as my mind grasped the enormity of my decision, the walls quaked and groaned, while the cries of the damned crescendoed into a thunderous roar. I turned, heart racing, realizing the abyss had not closed behind me, it had opened wider, revealing a vortex that pulsed with feral energy. As the prince's scream echoed through my veins, "You are the key." I plunged forward. In a vortex of shadows, the key had turned, unleashing what still lay chained beneath a presence far darker than I could ever have imagined. I was engulfed in the swirling chaos of the abyss, each heartbeat rumbling with a terrifying ferocity. As the shadows coiled around me, their lustrous forms darted and flickered, whispering secrets of unending torment, spilling forth an acrid breath that stung my senses. The cold stone floor vanished beneath me, replaced by a firm surface that throbbed with a pulsating rhythm, drawing me deeper into the heart of this new horror. Suddenly, the blinding light dimmed, leaving me in a terrifying twilight. The shapes morphed again, revealing a grand hall lined with ancient portraits, their frames gnarled and intricately decorated, tarnished with age. I staggered back, my breath hitching in my throat as the ghostly images gazed back at me. Eyes bore into my very soul, silently judging, their expressions twisted with despair and longing. Among the portraits, one stood out, a painting of the princess, cloaked in a regal gown that seemed to drip with shadows. Her face contorted with an unnatural ugliness, every brushstroke a grotesque portrayal of sorrow and rage. I could feel her gaze lock onto mine, her lips stretching into a mocking grin that chilled my blood. Yet, beneath the layers of her horrified expression, a flicker of recognition sparked within me. "Embrace the truth," the painted princess whispered, her voice a haunting echo that vibrated within the hall, wrapping around me like a shroud. The chains I had touched earlier glimmered faintly around the edges of the portrait, shimmering with a sinister allure. "This place, this curse, your connection runs deeper." With a mixture of dread and morbid fascination, I stepped closer, drawn to the chains like moth to a flame. The energy emanating from them throbbed in sync with my pulse, each heartbeat urging me to uncover the ancestry that bound me to this dark legacy. As I reached out to touch the frame, an icy wind billowed around me, swirling with whispers that clawed at the edges of my sanity. "You must know what is hidden. Remember." The princess's eyes flared with a luminescent intensity, flooding the air with an oppressive weight of expectation. I was paralyzed, caught between the creeping shadows and the wild allure of her command. Suddenly, the whispers turned into anguished screams, echoing the cries of the souls I had encountered. "Help us!" they warbled, their voices an unending chorus weaving through the very stone of the hall. The haunting chant surged forward, pulling me back toward the abyss from which I had just escaped, threatening to consume me once more. No. "I won't let this happen." I screamed back, heart pounding against the confines of my chest. A rift tore through the hall, and darkness poured from it like blood from a wound, seeping into the painted floor beneath me. My feet seemed to anchor into the ground, the surface slick with shadow, pulling me closer toward the growing void. Amidst the chaos, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked and faceless, wading through the darkness as if it were their dominion. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding toward me with an intent that sent ripples of terror coursing through my veins. "Do not resist," it hissed, voice a haunting melody dripping with malice. "You cannot alter fate. You are bound by blood and shadow." The entity reached out, and my mark burned ferociously on my wrist, as if the entity had grasped my very soul. A vision overtook me, vivid like a tapestry of twisted memories. I was soaring through time, witnessing the decay of the kingdom layered over generations, each scene melding with sorrow and chaos, culminating in the cursed portrait now hanging before me. "Your bloodline holds the key," the entity rasped, its elongated fingers brushing against the edge of the frame, infusing it with an essence I could not comprehend. The air grew thick with a stench that clawed at my throat, and it gestured to the other portraits, grotesque versions of the princess, each a piece of a shattered identity, remnants of lives failed and forgotten. "Free them, and you may yet save yourself," it whispered, eyes narrowing with an insatiable hunger, the promise of truth laced with decay. But no soul is without cost. The entire hall trembled, the walls shaking ominously as the prison of shadows tightened around me, fangs of darkness breaking free from their torment, clawing toward me like starving wraiths. The cries of the damned mingled with the guttural churning of the abyss, a cacophony of desperation, echoing the depths of the choices laid before me. And just when I thought I might find my resolve, the portrait flickered, casting a sudden burst of searing light that blinded me. I stumbled backward, trying to shield my eyes, and as I did, I felt the ground shift below me. The shadows writhed, and horror clawed at my sanity as I glimpsed the princess split into two forms, one, wailing, dragging chains that pulled her back into darkness, and the other moving toward a vault where secrets lay buried. In that heartbeat, clarity washed over me. I had to choose. But just as the decision began to crystallize, the walls crumbled, a void of unrelenting darkness swallowing me whole, leaving behind only the echo of two desperate pleas that lingered in the air, "Save us, damn them all." Before I could grasp the magnitude of it, I felt the tug of both futures, carving at my very essence, as the darkness loomed closer, ready to seize me in its endless embrace. As the void consumed me, I felt a sickening plunge, like sinking into a bottomless well. The echoes of those choices continued to reverberate, each whisper curling around my consciousness as layers of reality peeled back like decaying bark from an ancient tree. I sensed a presence coiling within the darkness, a nucleus of torment laden with malevolent intent. When I emerged, it wasn't into clarity but rather into obscurity, a corridor dimly lit with flickering candles that clung precariously to twisted iron sconces. The air was thick with an oppressive weight, the kind that weighs down on you, urging despair to unravel around your heart. I could hear the distant sound of sobbing, rhythmic and haunting, echoing through the stone passageway. Curiosity mingled with dread, binding me to the elements of this forsaken labyrinth that I began to walk, hesitant steps swallowed by the shadowy embrace of the corridor. Walls closed in, the stone cool and damp to my touch, pulsating with a heartbeat faint yet unnerving. The candles flickered as if stirred by a breath of wind, yet the air remained stagnant, pervaded by an unsettling silence. The sobbing grew louder, morphing into a song of sorrow that tugged at my heartstrings. I followed the melody, each note a plea for attention, an appeal for salvation echoing from deeper within the darkness. As I rounded a corner, a flicker of light broke through the gloom. A door standing ajar, the blackened wood splintered and warped. Peering through the gap, I caught sight of what lay inside. A barren room, walls draped in tattered silks, colors bleeding together like a grotesque watercolor painting. At the room's center stood a mirror, the surface murky and clouded, reflecting shapes too vague to distinguish. Above it, a chandelier of broken glass dangled precariously, its crystals trembling with the inescapable gravity of loss, but it was the figure before the mirror that transfixed me. A woman, unnaturally thin, her skin stretched over bone, gave in to despair as she gazed at her reflection. Her hair fell in matted strands, and tears mixed with the grime of age, carving channels through her pallid face. A deep, haunting sigh escaped her lips. "Help me," she implored, her voice like brittle leaves crackling underfoot. "The curse, it binds me here. The truth is in her eyes." She pointed toward the mirror, but the reflection she sought to reveal was shrouded in an impenetrable fog. "Who are you?" I barely managed to whisper, fear quaking in my throat that I was once her keeper. She gasped, breath hitching as anguish played across her features. "Now, I am a prisoner, a consequence of betrayal that etched this curse into our bloodline. To lift it, you must confront her. She dwells within, a truth lost to suffering and twisted memories." As she spoke, the air shimmered around the mirror, distorting time and reality. Within its depths, I glimpsed fragmented scenes, the portrait of the princess, horrors stretching beyond lifetimes, shadows reaching through the glass, clawing at this woman's sanity. The soft, sobbing had shifted into a cacophony of shrieks that echoed through my mind, saturating it with memories not my own. The figure stepped closer to me, her eyes reflecting an ominous plea. "You must not fear her. Discover the hidden truth. She holds the key to your very soul." In that moment, the air thickened with a dense fog, wrapping around me, pulling me into the embrace of shadow. The mirror shimmered again, and I could feel something shift deep within me, awakening. I took a step forward, the pull of destiny wrapping around my limbs, urging me toward the depths of the cursed reflection, but just as my fingers brushed the surface, the shadows ignited into an inferno of chaos, consuming the room as fragments of the past erupted into blinding flashes. The mirror shattered, each shard cascading down like sharp rain, slicing through the air between us. And in one final echoing pulse, the room imploded, flinging me backward. With a crash, I was thrown out into the corridor once more, the remnants of the woman's cries lingering in my ears, pleading, "Find her." Before it's too late, as I fell back, grappling for my bearings, the corridor began to twist and warp, the walls shifting like breathing entities, swirling shadows closing in. A terrible urgency ignited within me, igniting the fear I had tried to quench. The presence that stalked me from the depths of the darkness was awakening, an insatiable hunger on the brink of devouring everything in its path, and then, from the shadowy corners behind me, the whispers returned, relentless and furious, clawing at my spine like skeletal fingers. Embrace the curse or watch them all perish. With a frantic pulse pounding in my chest, I turned, grasping for the frayed edges of fate, only to hear the echo of a single chilling laughter rising from the Shadowsa voice unmistakably familiar. You thought you could escape. You've merely begun to understand that it was the worst kind of irony. The choice I faced now felt more suffocating than ever. Time lurched, and I realized some truths are more horrifying than nightmares, and I was irrevocably caught between two worlds, each desire laced with despair. The light dimmed, the corridor closing in as I gasped for air, the shadows reaching for me with a torturous embrace, pressing against my skin. And as dread wrapped around me tighter, the whispers grew louder, screaming, "Save us! Claim your destiny," and at that very moment, revelations clawed at the edges of my mind, battling against the shadows, pushing me to confront the princess. I had to choose how deep I would plunge into the horror, but before my thoughts could settle, I felt a cold hand grip my wrist. The entity from the portrait had returned, its presence dragging me toward the heart of darkness yet again. "Come forth, child of shadow. Your past awaits." The walls of the corridor trembled, shadows weaving like serpents. And just as I stumbled toward the threshold of my fate, the shadows around me rippled violently, coiling into a grotesque form that roared with impatience. A monstrous figure emerging from the depths, its eyes twin abysses. "Your destiny is here." And as the creature lunged toward me, the corridor dissolved, leaving nothing but the abyss and my scream, swallowed whole by the silence. I stumbled through the void, the weight of darkness pressing down with a suffocating embrace. Within that abyss, time lost all meaning. The howls of my thoughts echoed like tortured souls trapped in a storm, and through the chaos, a flicker of light cut through, beckoning me closer. I reached out instinctively, feeling the pull of that ethereal glow as I was drawn back into existence. The light burst forth, and I was thrust back into the chilling corridor, disoriented but alive. The air was electric with anticipation, the shadows swirling like malevolent spirits. The laughter that had haunted me moments ago lingered in the space behind me. It felt like a taunt, a reminder of the darkness always close at hand. My heart hammered in my chest as a voice slithered through the air, "You cannot hide from your truth." As I pressed forward, I noticed the candles flickering with renewed vigor, casting elongated, dancing shapes against the grim stone walls. Angered whispers surged around me like a tempest, intensifying the suffocating dread. Glancing back, I thought I saw a shadow move unnaturally, gliding over the floor like liquid night, flickering in and out of existence. I hesitated, fear gnawing at me like a hungry beast. But I knew I must not turn back. The truth awaited, hidden like treasures buried beneath layers of horror. The sobbing had returned, louder and more agonizing than before, echoing through the corridor with an urgency that clawed at every nerve. I pressed onward, hands brushing the damp stone as I navigated the twisting path, the air thickening with an almost tangible despair. My mind reeled from the woman's words, "The truth is in her eyes." I needed to confront the princess. The looming threat of time running out sent a chill down my spine. After what felt like an eternity, I arrived at another door, the wood twisted and grotesque, like a gaping maw desperate for release. Gathering my resolve, I wrenched it open. The room inside was stark and bare, save for a single, enigmatic portrait hung on the wall. The painting radiated a disturbingly vibrant color, a paradoxical splendor tainted with decay. The princess could have been beautiful once, but her features distorted grotesquely, a visage warped by torment. Her eyes, however, were arresting deep pools of sorrow, reflecting ages of anguish and despair. I felt that they could see right through me, exposing my fears and my darkest secrets. Sensing movement behind me, I spun, heart racing. The shadows danced with fervor, alive with malicious intent, as the air turned heavy like a thunderhead poised to unleash its fury. "What do you seek?" A voice rasped from the darkness, a slithering echo that sent icy fingers crawling over my skin. "Help her," I called, feeling a burst of desperation. "I need to free her." Laughter erupted, echoing like shards of glass as it reverberated against the walls. Your eagerness blinds you, foolish mortal, it hissed, slinking closer from the periphery of my vision. The shadows coalesced into an unnatural Shappi figure with elongated limbs, a nightmarish silhouette morphing into some twisted amalgamation of the princess and the wretched woman. No. I screamed, pressed against the wall, the weight of dread wrapping around me, casting me deeper into paralysis. You can't take her, oh, but the curse demands a choice, the figure crooned, its voice a symphony of ill-fated promises. And you are the key. Release her, and in doing so, you release yourself too. Or succumb, and become yet another whisper among the damned. A cacophony of conflicting emotions surged through me, and with every pulse of dread that pounded in my chest, memories began flooding my mind, chaos, betrayal, drowning cries pushing their way to the surface. The piercing gaze of the princess seared into my thoughts like a brand. I staggered, darkness swirling around me, attempting to shove me toward an endpoint I couldn't escape. Hurry. The figure roared, the room distorting as the prince's haunting wails blended into the shadows. The truth is buried deeper than you realize. Find it, or your soul will. Join the chorus of the lost. With a cry that shattered the air like glass, I lunged forward, reaching toward the painting as shadows latched onto my ankles, pulling me into their gripping despair. But before I could grasp the edges of the frame, the laughter grew deafening, the darkness swelling like a black tide, and just as my fingers reached the painted surface, the ground beneath me gave way, dragging me down into the abyss where echoes of the cursed passed away. A realm where truth and horror intertwined mercilessly. I fell through darkened skies, weaving between scarred timelines, visions of betrayal and anguish flaring before me. Then, with a jolt, I landed somewhere colder and darker. My breath misted in the air, faint murmurs threatening to engulf me. I became aware of figures swirling in the distance, muted whispers carrying secrets long forgotten. I pushed onward, desperate to find the princess, for I knew that uncovering her truth was the only way to survive this nightmare. But I sensed the shadows reforming behind me, gathering with sinister intent. The echoes of the lost voices grew louder, an intricate tapestry of grief woven into the very fabric of the night. Then, from the depths of despair, a voice shouted through the chaos, sharp and potent. You must choose now. Embrace the darkness or become the next victim. With every ounce of strength, I propelled myself toward the thrumming heart of the room, every fiber of my being screaming for the answer, the truth buried in the princess's gaze. But even as I reached the center, a blinding light erupted, blinding me and casting the shadows away momentarily. As my sight adjusted, I stood alone, heart racing, in a forgotten chamber where the walls dripped with blood. Shadows writhed around me, and there, at the far end of the room, a figure emerged, face obscured, cloaked in mystery and malevolence. Your choice is not yours alone, the figure hissed, revealing eyes that sparkled with a perilous enchantment. In that instant, truth and deception danced in the flickering light, and just as I prepared to confront the monster that had twisted the fabric of my destiny, darkness surged, clawing its way forward in a frenzied rush. The air thickened, my breath faltered, and I stood poised on the brink of revelation, realizing with horror that the true monster wore a familiar face, a face I had loved and lost. Choose wisely, it whispered as shadows coiled tighter around my heart, and a violent chaos erupted like a storm of anger unleashed. In that moment, everything shattered, echoes of memories morphed into screams, darkness devouring the truth, and just as I was about to unlock the horrifying secrets entwined with betrayal, darkness swept over me, leaving behind a chilling question that crept into my heart. Was I ready to face the truth, or would I succumb to the curse that had awakened within me? My breath quickened, the air thick with anticipation as I stood at the center of the forgotten chamber, grappling with the magnitude of the choice hovering over me like a guillotine's blade. The cloaked figure's eyes, shimmering like stars in an abyss, beckoned with an unsettling familiarity that twisted my gut. Memories flooded me, chose from a life I thought I had escaped, laughter in the moonlight, stolen dances in hidden gardens, the warmth of trust turning cold as betrayal seeped into the cracks. Face what you fear, it intoned, voice dripping with dark honey. This dance has many steps, and the music will never cease. With each syllable, I felt the shadow's grip tighten, as if the very walls conspired against me. I had to find the princess. A haggard breath settled upon my shoulders, the weight of despair threatened to drag me down into an eternal night. But tied to that despair was a kinship I had long buried. Leave her be. I shouted, the echoes rebounding through the chamber in a morose dialogue. Rage pulsed within me, igniting courage fueled by anguish. Let her go. In response, the figure merely laughed softly, a chilling symphony that reverberated like the toll of a forgotten bell. Let her go. You misunderstand. The curse connects you both. To free her is to confront your deepest shadows. You must choose what you truly desire. A shudder coursed through me, rippling through my veins. I wanted to help her, yet the memories clawed at me, each one a dagger of despair embedded deep. I thought of the princess's wretched gaze, the blend of suffering and innocence stark against the canvas of her eternal confinement. Your truth is not a truth without sacrifice, the figure continued, its form shifting in the flickering light, revealing fleeting glimpses of the prince's features, twisted into expressions of torment. What do you dare to lose? Can you bear the weight of the unshed tears between you? I grasped my head, squeezing my eyes shut to block out the dread swirling around me. It felt like the walls were closing in, shadows pressing down as whispers tickled my ears, old voices urging me to remember. Remember the betrayal. The night my heart shattered. Let me see her. I cried out, desperation knotting my voice. Show me. The figure paused, the moment hanging with a suffocating stillness before it stepped aside, revealing a pathway dimly lit by the glow of a single lantern. Numbly, I stepped forward, drawn by an unseen force, leaving the echoed laughter behind me. The lantern swayed gently, casting a warm light and exposing the murals along the walls that seemed to pulse with life. As I moved closer, stories unfolded in grotesque detail, images of the princess, vibrant yet tainted, spiraling through an endless cycle of betrayal and pain. Each stroke of the brush captured her laughter chased away by shadows, her smile wilting like a flower under the weight of frost. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath me, a chilling rumble rising from deep within the chamber like the groans of a wounded beast. The shadows danced ceaselessly, encompassing me, wrapping their tendrils around my limbs, tugging, pulling me back. Embrace the truth. The figure cackled, the echo swallowing rational thought. You are tied to her fate. I staggered, the walls warping, a vortex of spectral faces splintering before me. Then, within the chaos, I saw her, a fleeting glimpse of the princess, pale and ghostly, her haunted eyes wide with a mixture of fear and longing. Please, she mouthed, the sound falling silent, a single thread of hope that pierced through the maelstrom of darkness. Do you see now? The figure taunted, rising as it spread its arms wide, shadows cascading like a cloak around it. Time is slipping, the choice of devotion or betrayal unfurls in front of you. What lies within you? Will you save her, or are you destined to be another echo in this forsaken place? Before I could respond, the room convulsed violently, the lantern shattering, plunging us back into a deeper darkness. The walls seemed to close in even tighter, the air thick with the spectral whispers of the damned. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. It was as if the chamber itself were alive, demanding to be fed with my choice. Will you release her? The spectre hissed, leering down at me, its face a swirl of mocking affection. Electric sparks coursed through me, igniting long-buried courage. What could I lose? I would not falter again. I will free her. I declared, voice reverberating with a newfound strength that surprised even me, but as the words left my mouth, the chamber erupted in chaos, darkness frothed like boiling water, screams erupted around me, piercing my resolve as faces emerged from the shadows, wretched beings clawing towards me as if seeking salvation from the grip of despair. No. I shouted, retreating, but the shadows lunged, pulling me towards the unknown abyss, each anguished face a haunting reminder of what I had lost, faces that twisted and turned into horrifying masks of my own past errors. The ground fell away, and I plummeted into the void, a thought burning like fire in my mind. To unlock the truth, to face the princess, I would have to confront the darkest corners of my soul. The darkness yawned before me, and as I slipped into its depths, I realized with dawning horror the reality of my choices there, waiting for me, an unspeakable truth wrapped in the chains of betrayal. And just before I was swallowed whole, I caught a whisper, soft but persistent, slithering through the void, find me before it's too late. And so, as the shadows enveloped me, I braced myself for what lay ahead, understanding at that very moment that I was not merely a pawn in this cursed dance, I was part of the horror itself, tangled in a web of truths that had yet to reveal their murky depths. Would I be able to face the revelations lurking in the dark, or would I become yet another haunting echo, lost forever? The void engulfed me, cold and oppressive, as I tumbled through an expanse of nothingness, the echoes of my own scream swallowed by the darkness. Time lost all meaning, stretching into an unbearable silence until a sudden jolt arrested my fall. I landed with a heavy thud on hard ground, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs that I forced myself to rise, gasping for air, but the darkness wrapped around me like a damp shroud. When my senses adjusted, I realized I was no longer in the chamber that had held me captive. I stood in a room filled with shadow and dust, a long-abandoned study, shelves brimming with ancient tomes and the remnants of a lost world. An eerie stillness hung in the air, punctuated only by the soft rustling of unseen creatures skittering in the corners. The flickering remnants of candlelight danced against dirty walls adorned with faded drapery. The room felt alive, vibrating with a whispered tension. Dread trickled down my spine, insistently nudging me to escape. Yet, the weight of purpose pinned me to the ground. The princess was somewhere in this forsaken place. I could sense it in my bones that I moved tentatively, drawn toward an enormous portrait hanging on the far wall, its painted visage concealed beneath layers of grime and neglect. The figure within seemed to breathe, her features a haunting blend of beauty and sorrow. Heart pounding, I raised a trembling hand to wipe the dust away, revealing the princess' piercing gaze that held a deep, haunting luminescence. Her expression shifted, icy and unyielding, as if she were aware of my presence, capable of feeling my turmoil. In that moment, with just my fingertips brushing the frame, a resonant tremor pulsed through the study. I recoiled, dread gripping my heart as shadows gathered hungrily around the painting, tendrils creeping from its edges like fingers reaching out for me. Help me! The word echoed not just in my ears but inside my very soul, echoing against the walls of my consciousness until it throbbed painfully, reflexively. I turned, scanning the room, but found myself alone. The shadows shivered, hungry for secrets, and an undeniable urge gripped me, very essence tearing between the need to flee and the call for salvation. I moved back toward the portrait, propelled by desperation. Every truth hides a door, the specter's voice leached into my mind, slithering like a serpent around my thoughts. It felt woven into the fabric of this cursed space, intertwining with the air I breathed. You carry her burden, but do you carry the curse of your heart? A horrible realization began to take root as I placed my hands on the frame, illumination sparking between us, electrifying the air. What if I was not just a savior? What if I was the reason she suffered? The memories from my past rushed to the surface, tainted laughter and broken promises, each moment a reminder of the fragility that tethered us both to this wretched fate. As the shadows thickened, the whispers grew louder, accusations hissing through the stillness. You abandoned her, you betrayed her trust. I stood frozen, their words clawing into me, forcing me to relive the bitter truth. Suddenly, the entire room tremored violently, shaking loose the cobwebs of decades. The floor beneath me cracked, splinters of wood rising, and the air grew hot as a force, unseen yet palpable, surged from the portrait. Dark figures began to swirl around me, forming gaunt shapes of the long-forgotten, their eyes hollow and accusing. That I stumbled backward just as the painting itself shimmered. The princess' expression warped, shifting into something more monstrous, her mouth parting, a scream escaping or perhaps a plea, filling the room with a cacophony of despair. The shadows danced around us, trapping me in their suffocating embrace as the swirling forms continued to converge, their anguished wails drowning out reality. Unravel her story, uncover the truth. The phantom voices cried, melding into a single entity that transcended to me, a curse feeding upon my fear. Just as I thought all hope was lost, I spotted a glimmer beneath the turmoil, the key to my escape or perhaps my ruin. The golden locket buried in the folds of her gown glinted beneath the flickering light, its presence igniting a fierce determination within me. I took a shaky step toward the portrait, driven by both terror and an unyielding desire to touch that cursed object, but the shadows roared, fury igniting in their depths. They surged forward, clawing toward me, intent on pulling me down into their wretched abyss where the truth lay waiting, sharp and merciless. Get back. I screamed, launching myself towards the portrait. I felt the shadows swarm around me, a crushing presence intending to swallow me whole, just as I grasped the locket. In the instant our fingers touched, a blinding light erupted from the art. The room exploded into chaos, fracturing reality itself, and then, just as suddenly, I found myself standing on the threshold of a different realm, the air smelling of burnt ash and salt, a desolate shore stretching out before me. But I was not alone. In the distance, shattered and lonely, stood the figure of the princess, the cursed beauty, looking more spectral than ever, her back turned to me, as if she were lost in her own personal hell. And despite the distance, I could hear her whisper, "You must hurry. They're coming for you." As the ground beneath me began to tremble once more, I felt the darkness rising behind, more vicious and relentless than before, and I knew before I could reach her or uncover the mystery of the locket, I had to face the nightmarish truths that swirled hungrily around me. Would salvation come before the shadows dragged me under, or would I be doomed to haunt this haunting realm forever? Time was slipping away, and the pursuit was relentless. The desolation of the shore loomed heavy with a palpable dread. The hushed waves lapped at my feet like desperate whispers, pleading with me to turn back. The stench of brine mixed with the acrid scent of something burnt, memories of forgotten promises and oaths lost to time. I took a single step closer to the princess, her silhouette a haunting reminder of all that I yearned to save. "Don't," she murmured, her voice fragile like the last remnants of summer fading into winter. Her head turned slightly, and for the briefest moment, I caught a glimpse of her face, reeking of sorrow, yet marred by despair in a way that was far more terrifying than anything I had encountered in the realms of darkness. Without warning, twin flashes of blinding light erupted from the depths of the water, illuminating the gloom and revealing grotesque forms rising from the depths. They were the manifestations of my own fears, their faces twisted into gnarled masks of anguish. Shadows roared in unison, a cacophony of rage, as if they had been bound to this coast for eternity, unyielding in their pursuit of redemption. "Stay away!" I shouted, battling my instinct to flee. Each surge of anger from the wavering figures intensified their grotesque forms, their murky features contorting in rage. "The locket!" the princess cried, the desperation in her voice snapping me back to my purpose. "Unlock the truth. You must see what happened." I hesitated, the golden locket still clenched tightly in my palm, its weight both comforting and foreboding. What lay within it? Would it reveal the horrors I dreaded or offer a glimmer of hope? I could feel the shadows closing in, clawing, and burrowing into the ground beneath me like a relentless tide, eager to consume everything in their path. Swallowing my fear, I hurriedly uncapped the locket, but as the metallic clasp clicked open, a rush of wind erupted from it, sucking the very air from my lungs. From within, spectral tendrils unspooled, twisting into the form of the princess, now a wraith of her former self, ethereal but bound by anguish. "Free me!" she screamed. "There is no time. You must confront what lurks beyond the veil." I felt my heart race as the flimsy strands of reality began to bend and warp. The shoreline dissolved around me, the sand shifting into dark soil slathered with decay. It was not just the remnants of a forgotten paradise, it was a cemetery of lost souls, each tombstone eerily engraved with names only time could forget. Behind me, the horrors churned, the forces gathering into a maelstrom of dread as they not only sought to consume me but also the haunting reality of what I was about to uncover. The whispers grew louder, an unholy choir of lost voices vying to fully inundate my senses. "Your decision will shatter you." They wailed, circling around me, drawing closer still. I steeled myself, returning my gaze to the locket. Clutching it tighter, I breathed in the salty air, allowing the mist to intertwine with my resolve. "What must I see?" I called out to the wispy projection of the princess, desperate for guidance. "Look deeper. The choice is yours. Reclaim the truth, or condemn us both." As I strained to focus on the image swirling within the locket, the memory began to unfold like an exquisite nightmare, revealing flickering images of lives irrevocably twisted by betrayal and wrath. The princess, radiant and free, an unholy union revealed, the weight of vengeance manifest. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, pulsating with the strength of a tide, seething to pull me under. "You should not have come." They roared, Deeper and deeper I drowned in their echoes, the wind howled, freezing my blood as reality quaked around me. I gazed desperately at the locket, my only lifeline in this tempest, now twisting in response to the darkness. What happens if I choose to confront the truth? Only despair lies ahead, the figures absorbed in the shadows shrieked, their voices a menacing growl, and only it can set us free. The princess countered, her words piercing the suffocating gloom. With a roar from the depths, I tore my gaze from her and stared into the tempest of secrets, the barrier between my terror and the truth crumbling. Yet to uncover it meant embracing the darkness. The decision clawed at me, it was an unbearable weight pressing on my chest. Suddenly, the ground heaved beneath me, propelling me toward the chaos. A cruel laughter seeped from the darkness, mingling with the tug of sadness echoing in the breeze. I felt myself slipping, drawn into the vortex of the lost souls, their anguished faces swirling in the blackness, beckoning for release. You may find what you seek, but freedom always comes at a cost. Time stretched, and I found myself at the precipice, a final choice looming ahead, fraught with the promise of nightmares. With one last desperate leap, I plunged forward, ready to embrace the wrath of the truth, fully aware that whatever lay ahead would change everything, potentially sealing my fate forever. Just as I broke through to the other side, a chilling silence fell. I stood gazing upon a mirror reflecting my very soul, a gaping void in the glass, the shadows swirling behind me. In the depths of the reflection, an unfathomable darkness smiled back. Then, in a heartbeat, the visage shattered with a thunderous crack. The last thing I heard was an eerie whisper, "It's too late to turn back now." The shattered mirror hung in the air, every sharp fragment cutting through the silence. Time stretched into infinity as the glass splinters fell, glimmering like stars before collapsing into nothingness. My heart quickened, the taste of dread flooding my senses. I stood on that precipice between illusions and brutal truths, swept up in the tumult of despair and yearning, and then I heard her. "You must choose." The princess' voice resonated from the darkness, her presence lingering like an echo of beauty amidst horror. I felt her despair wrap around me like a cold shroud, urging me forward into the very heart of my fears. With hands trembling, I stepped toward the remnants of the mirror, every shard pulsating with a terrifying warmth. "What truth lies within?" I murmured, driven by a desperation that clawed at my throat. Would the vision of unspoken horrors engulf me entirely? Or would I finally unearth the mystery tethered to my existence? The air around me thickened, shadows whispering tales of forgotten souls, a symphony of anguish reverberating as I reached out to touch a fragment. Instantly, memories spilled forth, tangled images of laughter that turned to screams, of vibrant gardens wilting under the weight of betrayal, and the princess' face twisted in both beauty and torment. Each scene a testament to the cycle of pain and sorrow blending with my own haunted past. Suddenly, the world twisted. Dark tendrils lashed from the shadows, snatching at the corners of my mind, and lightning flashed in the depths, illuminating the true cost of my choices. "You were always the missing piece," a voice hissed, a chorus of the damned rising with the echoes of my heart. "Embrace the horror, embrace the destiny." In that moment, recognition surged. I staggered back, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening clarity. I was not merely the observer. I was the key to this darkness. The princess, the curse, they were a part of me, bound by blood, a relentless reminder of choices made and paths not taken. I looked up, my eyes locking onto the swirling shadows, understanding that the true horror lay not just in the curse but in my own lineage, the legacy of betrayal that rippled through generations. "Save us!" echoed the wails of the lost, and I felt their pain morph into something deeper. What if release was not merely freeing the princess, but acknowledging the darkness within myself? What if, by confronting the truth, I had to expose my own betrayal? No. I shouted into the abyss. I refuse to accept this as my fate. The shadows recoiled, forming grotesque shapes that writhed with fury, their mouths opening to release tortured screams upon me. And through that veil of chaos, a chilling calm settled as the princess stepped forth, her form shimmering with an ethereal glow that pierced the shadows. "You hold the power to break the chains," she urged, her voice thick with sorrow, resonating through the air, like wind through cracked trees. "But to save me, You must face what you have buried. The pain you must confront is not just mine, it is our burden." Terror and determination melded within me, for this was not merely a rescue. This was an act of redemption for both our souls. The chains shackled not just her spirit, but my own past woven within hers. "What must I do?" I pleaded, desperation tinged with courage spilling from my heart. With a heavy sigh, she gestured to the swirling abyss. "Unlock what lies beneath your own skin." Her eyes glimmered with hope and dread intertwined. "Only then will we walk free of this curse," and as I stepped forward into the blackened depths, everything trembled, the atmosphere pulsing with a heartbeat that palpably thudded in my ears, echoing with the voices of the cursed. Underneath it all was a slow dismantling of myself. I had to face every betrayal, every choice that led me here, every jealousy that had once whispered ugly lies. The air crackled, fracturing with emotion, and I tore at memories like old wounds, acknowledging what I had hidden within. Visions cascaded me loss, the ancestral blame, manifestations of regret washed over me, binding me into a singular truth. The past was not just an anchor, but a chain, and I had the key. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, lashing around me, furious and ready to consume my resolve. I pushed through, heart racing, ripping the veil that covered the truth. "I accept this darkness," I roared, my proclamation piercing the entirety of the wailing horror. Shadows twisted violently, coiling tighter, but before I could falter, light pierced through the darkness, an incandescent glow erupting from my very being, and then I understood. In facing myself, I became the light. Reality fractured, the endless abyss collapsing into a realm of clarity. I became one with the princess, the lost souls joining us, but not as empty vessels or faceless shadows. We transformed, echoes of agony casting off into shimmering light, illuminating the darkness. The chains that had once bound our spirits shattered, releasing both her and me in one breath, but just as victory sparked, a chilling laughter rippled through the air, slithering with wickedness. "You may have escaped this fate, but the curse won't end." The shadows retreated, revealing a deeper darkness emerging from the depths, ancient and unyielding, that I stood paralyzed, heart sinking, grasping the truth. The cycle of the curse was not broken, it merely shifted. The evil would linger. And I had become a vessel of both salvation and horror. An icy breath fell upon my neck, and before I could turn, I heard a whisper, sultry and dark, flooding my mind. "You are forever entwined in shapes of shadows, child of the cursed blood. We will find you again." As the darkness closed in again, I fled into the light, knowing that evil had not been eradicated but merely mislaid. Perhaps the struggle would never cease, but I would face whatever came. As I felt the weight of the princess beside me, our paths bound together under the unyielding gaze of eternity, and as the last flicker of light vanished, the haunting whisper lingered, echoing in the hollow of my soul, "It's only just begun."